The Satechi Smart Trigger is a DSLR remote trigger that you can control with your phone or other device using Bluetooth 4.0. I am using it with my iPad 3. You can use it to remotely and wirelessly trigger cameras from a few different brands, including Nikon and Canon. With the Smart Trigger, you have 3 modes within the app. Let's go through them and I'll show you how it all works. The first mode is regular shot, where you take one shot by pressing the big button here. If your camera is in bulb mode, you can press and hold this button for a long exposure. Next, you have manual shot. In this screen, you can press and hold this button until your photo is taken. If your camera is in bulb mode, you have 2 options. You can press and hold this button like you did on the previous screen, or you can open the shutter by turning this switch to on. It will remain open until you press this button. You also have this button, which focuses your camera when you are in autofocus. Your last mode is timed shot. This is where you can use the app like an interval timer. First, you set the delay until the first shot is taken. Then you have bulb, where you can set the length of time the shutter is open when you are in bulb mode. If you aren't in bulb mode, it doesn't matter what this says. You can leave it at 0, or you can have it at 6 hours, and your camera will ignore it. Then is interval, where you set the amount of time in between shots. Then you have number, which is where you set how many photos you want to take. Or you can also set the infinite switch to on, where your camera will continue to take photos until you press this button. Again, you have the focus button to focus your camera at any time. You also have reset to reset your settings here. This is also the screen where you can get to support if you have any questions about the Smart Trigger. Okay, now all of that is great, but why would you want to use it? This is great for long exposure shots where you don't want to touch your camera to have any sort of photographer-induced shake, like if you're shooting star trails or doing some light painting. You're pressing your shutter release button in the app rather than on your DSLR. It's also ideal for multiple exposures when you want lots of time in between shots. You can set it and let it work while you do other things. In fact, while you're setting up the app, you can choose to have the Smart Trigger device send information to your mobile device even if you have the app in the background and you're using it for something else, like talking on the phone or watching a movie. The app can be running in the background and sending and receiving information from the camera, so your photos are still being taken. This would be great for a time lapse of a sunrise or sunset, or maybe even some weather. Just set your camera up in a window, keep your phone or tablet nearby, and go do something else for a while. On my site, SnapChick.com, you know I do a lot of self-portraits, so I spend most of my time in the timed shot screen, using it like an interval timer. I especially like the infinite switch, where I can have the camera keep taking photos until I'm ready for it to stop. This way, I'm not running back and forth between my pose to the camera. I can just have my mobile device next to me and set everything up. And here's something else I kind of figured out. I wanted to use it in my studio, and I optically trigger my strobes and speed lights in the studio using the onboard pop-up flash or a speed light on my camera. But with the Smart Trigger loaded into the hot shoe, like so, I can't do that. So I just took my device out of the hot shoe and mounted it on a light stand, or just let it hang and I could wrap it around somehow. And then I was able to use my pop-up or speed light to trigger my studio setup. In part 2 of this review, I take you behind the scenes for a studio shoot where I'm using the Smart Trigger. There are many DSLR triggers on the market, so why would you want this one? The really special thing about the Satechi Smart Trigger is that you are triggering your DSLR with something you already have with you, your phone. Or, okay, in my case, my iPad. I am all about convenience and I use my mobile devices religiously. I love that it's wireless and that there's only one very small piece of hardware that I have to store in between uses. There's all kinds of gear out there, and the bottom line for this is that it just helps me be more creative.